Snow in the Summer, 1. Venerable Sayadaw Jodhika. Introduction. Sayadaw Jodhika, autobiographical. The need to express is very strong. It is very important for our growth. If you don't have any opportunity to express, you lose creative thinking. Well, that's another attachment. I can't force myself to let go of it. Many times I picked up my pen to write, and many times I put it down. Something hard to put into words is in my mind. Please don't think I'm preaching. I'm just expressing my personal point of view, feeling, observation, which seems true to me. I know that a lot of things I've said can easily be misconstrued. A person can use them against me. I can't really make my points clear in a letter. Even to talk about them would be a very difficult task for me. Anyway, I tried to express my views. The things I've said might not agree with the great books. I don't expect you to agree with me. They are not universal truths. Just my opinions as of October 1986. I'm liable to change, as anything else. Excuse me for my mistakes. I'm a man who keeps himself upset all the time, believe it or not. One day I'll be happy. Here is something about me. I was born into a Muslim family on August 5, 1947. I was educated at a Roman Catholic missionary school. I read about most of the things in this universe. I was called a communist when I was young because I did not believe in any organized religion. Do I believe in organized religion now? Well, who knows? I thought of becoming a bhikkhu, monk, from the age of 19, but instead I went to university, and found the education very unsatisfactory. I then educated myself. I found that almost everybody was after position, money, pleasure, very superficial. So I decided education was not worth the trouble. I couldn't go on living for the rest of my life like that. I left my family, although I love my daughters very dearly. I have no place in this competitive society. Being a bhikkhu and living in the forest is the best way of life for me, it suits my temperament. Yes, my grandmother was Shan. She lived a long, peaceful life and died when she was about 80. I was 14 then. We were very close. I think of her quite often. I like Shan people, too. They are very mellow. There are a lot of Shan people around Mamyo, some living in Yechan-o village where we are. There is another village called Yangwi where most of the villagers are Shan, and they speak the Shan language. Some old Shan ladies look like my grandmother, quiet, peaceful, loving, simple, patient, content, unimposing, and very friendly. How unlikely to find such people in modern cities. People who are rich are very suspicious, they think people are after their money. You asked me about my relationship with my family. It was never good. The only person I love in my family is my elder sister. She loves me although she could not understand me. Yes, I've never felt I belonged to that family. I was like a stranger in my family. Maybe someday I'll go and see my sister. My relationship with my parents was a love-hate relationship. Both of them are dead now. I was very lonely at home. I know how you feel about your relationship with your family. It's okay. We find love and understanding elsewhere. No matter what you do and no matter what happens, I will always be your father, brother, friend, counselor, etc. I live on the border of two different cultures, Eastern and Western. Born in Burma, Myanmar, and educated in a Western-style school. Being exposed to all different kinds of religions, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, and also to materialism through philosophy. I ended up not believing in anything seriously. Western psychology, Freud, Jung, Adler, Rogers, Laing, William James, and many others. Western philosophy, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Hegel, Kant, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, Bertrand Russell, Wittgenstein, Bergson, etc. enough to make a person very confused. I studied electrical engineering, read advanced scientific theories, including black holes. I know how little people are sure of anything. The most important thing to know is your own mind. Yes, I want freedom. And this should be known from the outset. My freedom is not for sale. Living too long in one place makes me feel like I'm in prison. I'm a lion, according to the Burmese tradition. I really feel like roaming in the mountains like a mountain lion. Ah, freedom. I can't tolerate any restriction, bond, or tie. Even attachment that restricts my freedom is not to my liking. People get attached to me and I see that as a danger to my freedom. I love freedom and I can't exchange it for anything. I love freedom of mind too. So I am seeing more and more what imprisons the mind. Although I've read a lot of the Pitaka Sea glossary for definition, when I find something, see something, it's like I'm making a new discovery. To discover for myself those simple truths, what a great joy. Eureka! I can't stand those people who talk like they know about something just because they've read about it in books. But sometimes I catch myself doing just that, though I'm doing it less and less. Mountain lion I am. Alone, but not lonely anymore. I have learned to live alone. Sometimes I want to express my deepest understanding, but it's hard to find a person who knows how to listen, understand, and appreciate. Mostly I'm the one who listens. People like to talk to me. I think wanting to be independent and free, physically as well as mentally, is my strongest desire. There are different forms and stages of freedom. I must follow my nature, at all costs. I might have to disappoint my friends. So many people expect so much of me. It is very unlikely that I will fulfill their expectations of me. I am heading towards my own freedom, not conformity. I've been reading Memories, Dreams, Reflections by Carl Jung. I am very interested in some of his ideas. Some of the things he said about himself really expresses me also. So I am going to quote some of the passages to you. As a child I felt myself to be alone, and I am still, because I know things and must hint at things which others apparently know nothing of, and for the most part do not want to know. Loneliness does not come from having no one around oneself, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views that others find inadmissible. If a man knows more than other people, he becomes lonely. But loneliness is not necessarily inimical to companionship, for no one is more sensitive to companionship than the lonely man. And companionship thrives only when each individual remembers his/her individuality and does not identify him/herself with others. I have to obey that inner law which is imposed upon me, leaving me no freedom of choice. Of course I did not always obey it. How can anyone live without inconsistency? Talking about rebirth, in my case it must have been primarily a passionate urge toward understanding which brought about my birth, for that is the strongest element in my nature. I have also realized that one must accept the thoughts that go on within oneself of their own accord as part of one's reality. The categories of true and false are, of course, always present, but because they are not binding they take second place. The presence of thoughts is more important than our subjective judgment of them. But neither must these judgments be suppressed, for they are also existent thoughts which are part of our wholeness. So, be mindful of everything. A person who has not passed through the inferno of their passions has never overcome them. They then dwell in the house next door, and at any moment a flame may dart out and set fire to his own house. Whenever we give up, leave behind, and forget too much, there is always the danger that the things we have neglected will return with added force. Don't sit on top of your passions, be mindful of them. For me, passed through doesn't mean acted out, it means being aware of them, experience them mindfully. Indeed, our cult of progress is in danger of imposing on us even more childish dreams of the future the harder it presses us to escape from the past. Reforms by advances, that is, by new methods or gadgets, are of course impressive at first, but in the long run they are dubious and in any case dearly paid for. By no means do they increase the contentment or happiness of people on the whole. Instead, they are deceptive sweetenings of existence, like speedier communications, which unpleasantly accelerate the tempo of life and leave us with less time than ever before. So, live as simply as possible. I have done without electricity, and tend the fireplace and stove myself. Evenings, I light the old lamps. There is no running water, and I pump the water from the well. I chop the wood and cook the food. These simple acts make man simple, and how difficult it is to be simple. In Bollingen, silence surrounds me almost audibly, and I live in modest harmony with nature. An indescribable stillness prevailed. In the tower at Bollingen it is as if one lived in many centuries simultaneously. The place will outlive me, and in its location and style it points backward to things long ago. There is very little about it to suggest the present. If a man of the 16th century were to move into the house, only the kerosene lamp and the matches would be new to him, otherwise, he would know his way about without difficulty. There is nothing to disturb the dead, neither electric light nor telephone. Carl Jung. There is a lot more left, but I want to stop here. You must be bored to death. I think I am a rebel in some ways. All my life I've been a rebel. My fantasy, living deep in the mountains, away from people and noise with bare necessity, quietly and peacefully. Do I cry? Well, who would believe that an old monk like me still has tears to cry? My nature is like slow burning ember. You don't see the flame but it burns nonetheless. I don't want judgment, I want understanding. I am also not perfect. I am becoming even more imperfect. So I'm scared of those who are judgmental. I want to be left alone. They say a monk shouldn't be attached to anybody or anything, but I can't do that. I'm not just a monk, I'm also a human being. I am not trying to be somebody. I just try my best to understand whatever is happening in my life, in my mind, in my heart. No name and no fame, when I die nothing will remain. Chapter 1, Mind, Mindfulness, and Meditation. Whether meditation, as I understand it, is not creating something, calm, concentration or insight, or whatnot. Rather it is seeing clearly whatever is happening in the moment in a very simple way. Aiming at it, or creating calmness, or insight is trying to start from where we should be. So we always fall back to where we are because we did not start from we are. Another way of saying it is, meditation is complete internal communication, or life, problems, understood in depth is meditation. So there should be no difference between untangling the content of one's stuff, working with problems, neurotic, or whatnot, and meditation. It is all part of the same process. For me, doing counseling and giving guidance in meditation are not much different. So a person who does not understand people but has a lot of book knowledge is not a meditation teacher, or counselor, but is a scholar. A person who teaches and guides people according to a formula should not teach. Most Westerners need a lot of help just untangling the content of their stuff. For this, a worldly teacher can be very helpful. I understood this point a long time ago, and I am getting deeper into this matter. Even when I was in the USA, my way of working with people was first to understand their life, their stuff, their problems, and see where they are stuck. Helping them see their problems clearly. The whole point of meditation is just untangling, to untangle internal and external tangles. So there can be no cut and dried formula for everybody. People are unique. So there should be flexibility. The Buddha himself gave different instructions for different people. My understanding is that a meditation teacher must be very sensitive. He, or she, must understand himself very deeply. He must be aware of his own tangles, be very creative in dealing with people, understand every person in a deeper way, be gentle and patient in guiding. Not be pushing or demanding to make progress, which can cause a feeling of inadequacy and unhappiness. He must understand where his student is. You know, we must start from where we are, not from where we should be. So, a teacher must understand where a student is and give him/her guidance so that the student can start from where he/she is. Meditation, as it's been taught to and practiced by many people, has its limits. That's because they don't understand it properly and they are trying to do it as if it is something apart from their life. Real mindfulness meditation is all-inclusive. No part of our mental and physical life should be left out of our mindfulness. Every aspect of our life should be well understood. Real practice is natural, moving, living, limitless, should be practiced everywhere, every time. A specialized and fragmented approach is unacceptable for me. I am beginning to feel that a specialized, standardized approach is harmful. I have never been able to restrict myself to do that. For me, meditation is not something special. Everything seems so trivial to me. Crazy games. Meaningless hurry. Why so much doing? The best thing I can do for myself is to be mindful. Look into your mind, life, and see how dependent you are on people and books. See how easily you get bored. Can you live with boredom without doing anything about it, except being mindful of it? Doing nothing is actually not easy. I believe you know that from your experience. What happens to your mind when you do nothing? Have you carefully observed that? Boredom is unbearable. So we try to find something to do, to run away from boredom. Just try to do nothing for a few days. Non-doing is not easy. If you try to do non-doing, then you are doing. If you try to accomplish something, you are doing. And your ego is strong. If you don't do anything, then you become meaningless and empty. Non-doing is a state of mind which is free from ego. Doing without reacting, without a person doing it. And most important of all, doing wholesome deed without expecting anything in return. Understanding comes to those who are not in a hurry to understand. Understanding is like a fruit tree, it takes time to become mature. One cannot force it to bear fruits. Instead of running away from boredom, if you can work through it, you will find a kind of wakefulness, alertness, life, clarity beyond that. Then the mind becomes workable. Mostly we give in and become busy. When we're busy we feel useful, important. When we're doing nothing we feel useless and feel ashamed. Some people take pride in being busy. There is a kind of dullness in the mind which is always there. We need something exciting, some kind of stimulant, either talking or reading or traveling or, to keep the mind awake. Otherwise it is in a half-wakeful state. If you can train your mind to be awake all the time, without any of those stimulants, you will find a new kind of energy. Only by being constantly mindful can you get there. Whether you are on retreat or not, it is important to be mindful all the time. Doing a retreat is useful. But it is very important to keep up your practice so that you can maintain your clarity. Otherwise you go downhill again. It's like swimming upstream. If you don't make a continuous effort, you go downstream. Effort in meditation is like effort in learning to ride a bicycle. In the beginning you put too much effort and you fall off. Later on, by doing it repeatedly, you learn to put just enough effort to keep you on the bicycle so you can put more effort to move forward. You learn by doing it. The most important point, I think, is continuity. If you know what mindfulness means, then be mindful more and more. By being mindful you learn how to be mindful with relaxed effort. If you think you need to put more effort, do it and see how it affects your mind, mindfulness. You will learn how to maintain your mindfulness. You will find that your mind is not at ease when it is not mindful. I want to be free and peaceful, bodily and mentally. So I'm looking to see what makes a person not free and not peaceful. The more I can see what's binding me, the better there is the chance of becoming free. The answer is quite simple: attachment and pride. But to see them when they are in action is most important, not just to think about them. I don't want to be busy. Being busy is a wasteful way of living. When you're busy you get so involved that you cannot see what's going on in your mind. You become unmindful. So I don't want to be a busy teacher. Never. I talk about this again and again. If you want to get the most out of meditation, do it wholeheartedly. Do it as if there is nothing else you want to do in your life. Beware of distractions. To learn how to swim you have to get into the water. No use sitting on the bank and asking people to teach you how to swim. With minimum instruction you can get into the water and teach yourself how to swim. Choose a suitable object, or two, for yourself, and be mindful of them continuously. Continuity is the most important point. Thinking cannot make the mind happy. Watch your thoughts without wanting to control them. When you see them clearly they will stop. Thinking is such a big burden. The most important thing is to be aware of your own mind. Also your motives when you do things. Mostly people are not aware of their motives when they speak or do things and, in most cases, when they are aware of their motives they justify them. Mindfulness practice, meditation, is awareness of everything happening in all six sense bases all the time, from the moment you wake up until the last moment before you fall asleep. Not just when sitting. Much more important to be mindful of and understand your fantasies, ideas you are attached to, frustrations, loneliness, and any other feelings, weak or strong. If something works for you, like noting, do it. Do it long and do it well so that you know all about its advantages and disadvantages. Meditation is the best kusala, wholesomeness. If you are mindful and wise, you never lose. The ideal is to be mindful always. I'm happy when I'm alone. Talking is boring. I told you about my feeling of drifting away into the universe. Things, and also people, are losing their influence on me. Hard to talk about this feeling. I feel much lighter in my heart. Don't take the commotion seriously. And don't try to justify it either. You are living your own life and you have a right to do whatever you think is right for you at that moment. If you make a mistake, learn from it. If you make a mistake and you are in trouble, look into it without complaining or blaming oneself or others, or running away. Without justifying yourself or getting upset about it. If you can see this without any resistance you can overcome, grow out of, that very quickly and easily. I am getting better at that, now. Relationships are so frustrating. I told you many times, I'm becoming alone. So I understand very well what you said, I retreat within myself. If you watch your mind really closely without wanting to be different, it will resolve your knots, but don't watch your mind only in order to resolve your knots. That will cause a conflict. Sianata, no self, in your mind. I think one day I'll go away and live alone somewhere. I'm getting tired of religion. I'm just preparing my mind. I've been meditating more this last month. So nice to be alone. I want to read less and less. Now I want to read my mind more. I don't learn anything in depth from books. Only when I see my life, my mind, clearly can I learn something in depth. For a human being, understanding human nature in general and understanding his/her mind in particular is the most fruitful thing. What I'm doing here is so important for me, I mean delving into my mind, that I don't want to interrupt it unless there is a good reason. In fact, I want to go to a much more secluded place, and live alone and meditate all the time, without interruption. Nothing else is worth the trouble. You have read, you have talked, you have discussed, you have thought a lot, and still you are confused. Enough of all those things. This clarity makes the mind a lot less attached. My mind is now very much detached and clear. I don't want to get distracted. So you are not confused about being confused? Some people don't know they are confused. They are too busy or crazy to think about that. All I can tell you is don't think too much and be mindful. You know thinking too much makes you more confused. If you can be mindful when you are sick you will learn something very deep and meaningful. You will see how lonely you are and how meaningless everything is. When the worst of the worst happens we will be really alone. I'm seeing this loneliness more and more. There are very few people who can reach us and understand us. Between each person there is a big chasm of misunderstanding. Mindfulness is part of our nature. It can be developed naturally with ease. Can you explain to her how to be aware of her thoughts and feelings? Not control. Just simple, bare awareness of mind. The chattering, the monologue or dialogue going on in the mind. The comments, judgments, etc. Mindfulness is a way of life, living. Wherever we are and whatever we are doing, we should do it mindfully. Thinking is a big hindrance to mindfulness. We should be mindful of that. Actually, it is very important to be aware of thinking. Watch your mind without blaming or judging. See it as a thing in itself, not you, not yours. In meditation, do whatever comes easily and naturally. The most important point is to be interested, and it should be interesting, to be happy doing it. There should be some satisfaction in doing it. Once something becomes boring, there is a negative attitude towards it. With that sort of negative attitude, it is tiring to go on doing it. You said, Sada, confidence, equals energy. Yes, when you have Sada in your practice, you have energy to do it. So, if you are interested in watching your mind instead of rising and falling, why not? The mind is the most interesting thing in life. Walk more and be mindful. The more you think of how to improve your situation, the unhappier you become. Always planning for the future. I will be happy if I live in a good place. Always, I will be happy if. Never, I am happy. Enough planning, improving. Becoming is so predominant in our life. We don't see that there is no being. How can there be becoming without being? Just see what is happening at this moment without any motive to improve it. I understand your struggle and pain. I know you are trying your best to be a good disciple of the Buddha. It is hard. It is not even easy to keep the 5 precepts. Yes, some people think so. Tapati Magaphala, the path and the fruit of stream winning, is nothing. They don't understand how extraordinary it is not to have, to be rid of, wrong views, to overcome rites and rituals, superstitions. To come to see clearly that Dhamma practice is the only way that could lead to liberation, happiness. They don't know what an extraordinary thing it is not to have any envy, jealousy, to rejoice in other people's prosperity, to share whatever you have with others. And to have overcome all the doubts about one's practice, whether it is the right way or not. What a relief it is not to have doubts about the path one is walking on. I can understand how hard it is to practice sati, for someone who is living such a busy life. I am not 100% mindful either. It would be better if you can cut down on any unnecessary activities. We listen to the dictates of our minds and run around doing things that our minds tell us to do. But if we watch our minds more closely, we will see that we don't have to believe all the things that our minds tell us to believe, and we don't have to run around like mad doing all the things that the mind tells us to do. He who would accomplish anything, must learn to limit himself. Goethe, we waste so much time in trivial pursuits. The Buddha said, Apakiko, few duties or responsibilities. If you limit yourself more carefully, you will be able to develop deeper awareness. If you cannot be mindful in your daily life, you cannot develop understanding of life. The understanding of life and the understanding of Dhamma go together. First of all, learn to live your daily life meaningfully, sanely. I've found very few people who are deeply interested in Dhamma as you are. Most people are not even aware of their states of mind. We all have good, wholesome, states of mind and bad, unwholesome, states of mind. To be aware of both states of mind is the first and most important thing to do. We don't really have any real control of the mind, and that is why it is an atta. See that you are not making these bad, unwholesome, mind states. To understand the nature of mind, that is, the nature of lobha, greed, dosa, aversion, moha, delusion, mana, comparing, issa, jealousy, makarya, stinginess, kukuksa, worry, and so on. And also to understand sati, mindfulness, samadhi, concentration, pa, wisdom, metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, etc. is more important than to attain some stage of enlightenment or to get rid of any kilesa, defilement. Understanding comes first, overcoming happens, follows, naturally, later. So, please, be willing to watch whatever is happening in the moment. See the nature of it first. If you are upset because there is labha, or dosa, or, you will not see it clearly because you are agitated, you have dosa, aversion. See that too. Only when you are willing to look at your mind without feeling guilty, without wanting to do anything about it, will you be able to see it clearly. Then it will lose its power over you because it is exposed, it is transparent. Please don't condemn greed, pride, anger, and so on. You can learn quite a lot from them. You cannot grow up unless you know about them very well. Only when you can see them with a clear mind can you learn about their true nature, especially their anattaness, selflessness. The first and most important step in meditation is non-identification with mental, nama, and physical, rupa, phenomena. It is not overcoming anything except overcoming identification with the Dharma process. Why do people get upset? Because they identify with Dharma. So, when there is greed, lust, attachment, or frustration, anger or pride, etc., the most important point is to see them as a natural phenomenon without taking them as something personal. Don't try to overcome them. Being upset is another ego trip. Is there a person, Atta, who is upset? Being upset is just another natural phenomenon. Being upset is ego boosting. If the mind doesn't get upset, if there is non-identification in the watching mind, which means there is equanimity, the mind will be able to watch greed, etc. with interest, calmness, and clarity, and see it for what it is, a fleeting, insubstantial, impersonal, natural phenomenon. Identification makes all defilements stronger. Without identification they are not so strong. A Sotapanna C glossary still has greed, anger, etc., but there is no identification with Dharma. Only Anagama C glossary and Arahant C glossary are free from greed and anger. But only an Arahant is free from mana. If you are upset because you enjoy music, you are being too demanding, you are asking, expecting, too much. But if you see the enjoying mind and watch it with equanimity, only then will you see it for what it is. Being upset, which is dosa, is a close companion of greed and pride. Because you think, I am a meditator so there shouldn't be greed or pride arising in my mind, you get upset. When there is greed or enjoyment of any kind, say instead, please stay and let me study you. They are really wonderful. Greed is the greatest magician. Learn, see, the way it conjures up pleasant feelings. The mind gets so tricked by greed that we don't see it as a magician, we see it as me. The mind is tricky. The mind wants change, something different. It craves for entertainment, stimulation. Boredom is a great problem. That's what most people are doing, running after stimulation in one form or another. If we don't watch out we can become very self-righteous because we are meditators, or practicing Buddhists, or we know Dhamma, we know what is good and what is bad, which is mana again. When there is mana in your mind, be willing to see it clearly. Don't try to drive it away. To see it clearly is very important. The rest will take care of itself. Only when one becomes an arahant is one totally free of mana. Don't practice humility, it will be forced humility. Just be mindful of mana. If you see your mind clearly you will become humble naturally. You won't feel like you're practicing humility. You become less proud without your consciously doing it. Without understanding the immediate effect of wholesome and unwholesome states of mind there cannot be real appreciation of Dhamma. Outward submission to any form of religious practice will never have a profound and lasting result. To understand the reaction of the mind to every experience through the 6 sense doors is very important, especially the influence of ideas and the attachment to them. Have you understood, do you understand, wholesome, kusala, and unwholesome, akusala, states of mind? I think this is most fundamental in the practice. I don't want to use the words good and bad in connection with kusala and akusala. I don't mean understanding them by reading about them in a book or by thinking about them. I mean by really seeing them immediately. To see the difference of the qualities of minds when it is wholesome and when it is unwholesome. Sometimes when I see these very clearly, I come to understand that it is not worth having an unwholesome state of mind no matter what the situation, circumstance, is. There must be a proper way, without having an unwholesome state of mind, to confront a trying situation. This is wisdom. To be able to live in any situation without an unwholesome state of mind. To get that wisdom, first we must be clearly mindful of the mind reacting to all situations. To everything we see, we hear, etc. To see whatever is happening in the mind without wanting it to be different, whether it is unwholesome, unpleasant, not beautiful, not desirable, e.g. anger, lust, doubt, conceit. And to see whatever is pleasant happening in the mind without wanting to hold on to it, without trying to make it last longer, calm, tranquility, rapture, clarity, etc. This is very important. The moment the mind wants to be in control of the situation, to oppose, obstruct, or hinder what is happening, or to create, to bring into being, or to make it last longer, it loses its balance. Opposing is aversion. Holding on to is attachment. But not to oppose doesn't mean to encourage either, and not to hold on to doesn't mean to discourage. Just simply watching is mindfulness. Watching without getting involved. We are so used to doing something, making something, that we don't know how to simply watch. We want to have control over things. We want to get involved. So we get into trouble. I don't mean to say, don't get involved, don't control, because then you will be trying not to get involved, not to control. Which is again trying to be in control. So, if you are trying to control, simply be aware of that. Actually, more and more I can see that without mindfulness life would be very superficial. Mindfulness gives depth and meaning to life. It is something hard to understand. People say they want to be happy. But, then, how come they are not interested in being really mindful? It must be because they think happiness lies somewhere else, like in sense pleasure, such as in getting what you want, in becoming somebody, in being in control of some important position, in some pleasurable feeling. People, you and I, want excitement, something stimulating, intellectually, for me. Sometimes we want to rest, we get tired of stimulating things. Then we want to practice mindfulness, keep the mind quiet. Sometimes I get really tired, feel burnt out, of reading, talking, thinking, planning. Then my mind turns away from all those things. I can see how meaningless they are, how unnecessary. At that time, it is very easy to be just simply mindful. So I wish I felt burnt out all the time. So, it is okay to feel burnt out. Siddhartha was burnt out when he left home. So many petty schemings in the world. Our highest insights must and should sound like follies and sometimes like crimes when they are heard without permission by those who are not predisposed and predestined for them. Nietzsche. It is very important to keep the body and mind well tuned, like you tune your car or your radio. Only when in good condition will they be sensitive, able to detect properly the frequencies, the vibrations, and the signals. So, it is very important to learn how things affect our body and mind. Food, weather, exercise, talking, reading, sensual pleasures, everything affects body and mind. And also meditation. Meditation makes the mind more sensitive. The mind likes to dwell in the past or in the future. It touches the present only tangentially, doesn't want to stay in the present. Always looking for distraction, watching TV, listening to the radio, or a cassette, eating, talking, smoking, reading, yes, I forgot that, reading, and whatnot. Do we really like mindfulness? Well, yes, but, ha. No wonder we are superficial. We use mindfulness as a painkiller. Only when life becomes too painful do we want to go to a quiet place and meditate. Otherwise we are quite content with distractions. One cannot be totally free from anger. It will come when there is sufficient cause. All one can do is to see that there is anger. It helps if one can see that people are suffering. See how much you hurt yourself when you are upset. It's not worth getting upset over anything. Be mindful. See anger only as anger, not my anger. Don't say you should not be angry. It is very important to be realistic. We have ideals, but we might never attain those ideals. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have ideals. It means we must be aware of our capacity. So, don't be discouraged because you have ups and downs. Try to be mindful as much as possible. Try your best. I used to feel bad, ashamed, about having faults, not being perfect. In some cases, it is other people's unrealistic expectations projected onto me, and unknowingly I slip into the role they expect of me. It is impossible, it is even dangerous, it makes me feel inadequate. But now I have learned to be myself. Please be mindful even though it is hard sometimes. When you think it is impossible to be mindful, that is the time when it is most important to be mindful. It is more important to meditate when you are restless. When you think it is impossible for you to meditate because your mind is crazy, that is the most important time for you to meditate. In the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the Buddha said, Vakidam va siddham vakidam siddham pajanati. When the mind is restless, one knows that the mind is restless. You are not expected to do more than that. The Buddha did not say you should feel guilty for being greedy or angry. You know what's happening. Don't deceive yourself. That's all you can do. So, be mindful but don't beat yourself up. Acceptance and honesty is the most important thing. Just knowing the states that the mind is in would be enough. If you try to do anything more than that, you'll end up being even more frustrated. There is no control, and that means anatta. Saragam va siddham saragam citt anti pajanati. When the mind is lustful, one knows that the mind is lustful. Pajanati, to know clearly, that's all, not more than that. To have a calm and peaceful mind all the time is impossible for someone who is in contact with so many people every day. I know how reading some Dhamma books and or listening to some Dhamma tapes can make one feel guilty. The ideal is too high. We cannot reach it. We don't need to feel guilty about enjoying sense pleasures as long as we don't harm anyone. See what enjoyment of sense pleasure is. Suksam va vedanam veda iyamano suksam vedanam vedayama I pajanati. While enjoying pleasant sensations, one knows that I enjoy pleasant sensations. Where does guilt come in? Who taught us to feel guilty whenever we enjoy our life? Enough. Even though we know mindfulness is the best thing we can do for ourselves, we get distracted very often. We want to be stimulated. Watch your mind and see what it is doing. If you understand your mind, most of your problems will disappear because most of the problems are mind-made, they have no reality outside your mind. The best you can do is to acknowledge, to be aware, to know the state of the mind is in without blaming yourself, or justifying, without wanting it to be different, or running away, without feeling guilty or ashamed. Look at your mind as mind, not as my mind. Whether it is good or bad, see that as anatta. See that it arises because it has sufficient conditions to arise, not arising on its own. Not a being, not me, not mine. Kilesas, defilements, are very interesting. Expectation is the source of disappointment. In itself, it even makes the mind restless. Sometimes, I think that having an ideal of calmness, peacefulness, and cheerfulness makes a person even more frustrated. Those who are living a secluded life might be able to be equanimous, but not me. As soon as you have contact with people who are inconsiderate, selfish, who take advantage of you, you will find it difficult to have equanimity. Calmness is necessary to develop deep insight, it is the opposite of agitation. There is nothing wrong with having some calmness, but be careful of attachment to calmness, that attachment is dangerous. Calmness makes the mind clear. It refreshes the mind and helps mindfulness. Yonaso manasikara, right attention, is the proximate cause of kusala, wholesome states of mind. There can be no kusala without yoniso manasikara. Ioniso manasikara, wrong attention, is the cause of akusala, unwholesome states of mind. We are doing auto-suggestions every day, but most of us don't know that. Some are positive and of course some are negative. Suggestions are very much like attitudes. The most important thing to know is your own mind. The only thing you have direct experience of is your mind, which includes your thoughts, feelings, attitudes, etc. All the rest is inference. Even when you look at your hands and think that you see its shape and color, it has gone through many stages. How do you see shape and color? What is shape? And what is color? A friend reported to me that when he was meditating and was aware of sound, at first he experienced sound as coming from somewhere at a distance. Later when he became more mindful he experienced sound in the ear, happening in the ear. And then when he became even more mindful he experienced sound happening in the mind. Without mind there can be no sound. Nothing is a good substitute for mindfulness. You said, I knew many of my problems would go away if I were to continue this practice. We often say, if, what is it which keeps us from really doing it? Why if? It seems like we don't want our problems to go away. Or we don't really believe we can make it. So it is better to say if. This keeps us hoping. If we really do it and don't succeed, then we will have no hope anymore. So better not to really plunge into it. Just hoping. If you don't really do it, you can always say I can. This is the way the mind plays tricks. To protect itself from feeling hopeless, it never does anything wholeheartedly. Why do we try so hard to convince others? When I came back from America many people asked me whether there were a lot of people in the USA who believed in Buddhism. They were very happy that Westerners are practicing the Buddha's teachings. Yet they themselves are not really practicing. Why are they happy that Westerners are practicing, or becoming Buddhists? Why do you feel happy when others believe in what you believe? People are very funny. We don't know anything for sure. But we know that we suffer. If we don't get agitated, we'll find an answer. The pride of having an answer has caused my blindness. Sayadaw U Jodaka.